Hey folks, today I'm going to talk about a few of the more popular 257 Weatherby hunting bullets and how they actually seem to work on game. You get a lot of questions out there. You see in the internet, folks are thinking about getting a 257 Weatherby or have one, and they're asking, hey, what bullets should I use? A lot of the responses usually revolve around, well, this one shoots good, that one shoots good, but when it comes to how they're performing on game, it's tough to sort of sort through the different opinions and limited amount of experience that a lot of folks have. So just wanted to share some of my personal experience with it and help you out a little bit. I've had a 257 Weatherby as my primary rifle for about 7 years now. I've been fortunate enough to take a little bit more than 20 whitetails with it, 3 mule deer, 2 antelope, and a black bear. Different parts of the country: Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wyoming, Montana, Alberta, Canada. So included some very mature deer, not just small southeastern deer in that total. And just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what worked and why I chose what I did. So a few of the ones I looked at were, when I first got the gun, it was basically the Weatherby factory loads. You had the 150 grain Nosler Ballistic Tip, the 110 grain Nosler Accubond, and the 100 grain TSX were 3 that I started out with right away. I'm going to first start with the one that I've never used to shoot any deer with and talk to you about why I did that, and that would be the 115 grain Nosler Ballistic Tip. I have a lot of experience with ballistic tips. I probably shot close to 30 deer with a 270 Winchester and 130 grain Nosler Ballistic Tips. My hand loads were a little bit under 3,000 feet per second, about 2950, and even at that slower velocity with the bigger Nosler Ballistic Tip, those things would rarely pass through a deer. They would blow up inside of the deer. They killed deer. They hit very hard, but the bullet would really just sort of fragment inside of the deer. So now if you're talking about a 115 grain bullet out of a 257 Weatherby, it's going to be 400 to 500 feet per second faster. I just think that's a recipe for potential disaster if you have a close shot. Now I know from longer ranges they probably work fine once the velocity slows down, but my hunting style is I want to be prepared for a long shot, but if a short shot presents itself, I want to take that deer, and I just don't want to risk a 100-yard or less shot with a ballistic tip that's traveling 3,400 or so feet per second. So for that reason, although I shot them in my gun, they shot pretty well, I have not and do not plan to use the ballistic tips in my 257 Weatherby. So moving on to the Nosler Accubond 110 grainer, a lot of guys love those. A lot of guys love those in a 257 Weatherby. I have not used them a whole lot in mine, mainly because for whatever reason they just don't shoot as well as the 100 grain TSXs. So that was sort of the first reason I started right out of the gate not using them. But I have shot a few deer with them, and I was actually shocked at the limited amount of penetration. I shot 2 bucks last year with 110 grain Accubond in my 257. One was in Pennsylvania, one was in North Carolina. One was about 175 yards, the other about 20 yards. Neither bullet had exited. They were both broadside shots. Both deer died. They both died quickly, but very limited penetration, and the bullet really exploded inside of the chest cavity with very limited penetration. And they acted more like what I would normally see a ballistic tip act, let's say in my 270, with all the experience I have there. And when I am choosing a hunting bullet, I'm not choosing it for the perfect shot. I'm choosing it in case you get the not optimal shot, right? And for that, I'm going to err a little bit more toward penetration. So one of the shots I would think of would be a tight quarter away shot. That can be a very fatal shot, but if you err a little bit, if it's tight quartering away and you hit it a little back with a good bullet, it's going to travel right through the midsection and hit the vitals. If you choose a bullet that's going to expand too quickly, you could end up with a gut shot deer, and these are some of the factors in a field situation you just can't control. So for that reason, not too keen on the Accubond personally, even though It's 2 for 2. Haven't wounded any deer, but just the fact that it's very limited penetration at mid and close ranges, I'm not too keen on that. So moving on to the TSX. So the first few deer I shot just using the factory load TSXs, outstanding results, and then I moved on to the tip TSX and started hand loading 100 grain tip TSX. My hand loads and the factory loads are both in the 35-50 feet per second range. Between the two, I can't see any difference performance-wise on a deer between a tip TSX and a regular TSX, so I'm just going to treat them pretty much the same. The bulk of the animals I've shot with my Weatherby, though, have been the tip TSX, probably 90% of them. And what you're going to see with the tip TSX, in almost every case, it's going to pass through the animal. It's going to have a small entrance hole. It's going to have about a nickel size exit hole, and the deer is going to die very quickly. If you hit the deer in the high shoulder, up toward the front, where the musculature is, in the spine, it's going to be the lightning type, boom, sack potatoes drop. In fact, you could see some of the other videos I have posted shooting multiple deer with tip TSX, where the deer just collapses in a heap. However, as most of you have been around long enough know, the bang flop type shot isn't so much the bullet type as where you hit the deer. If you hit the deer, say more where you would do an archery shot behind the shoulder through the lungs with a tip TSX, or any of those other bullets for that matter, you're going to get the deer's going to take off on a dead run, and you're going to find it in 40 to 50 yards with a good blood trail. What I like about the TSX, even in those cases, like I said, it's going to be about a nickel size hole on the exit. I've always seen a ton of blood. The deer don't go very far. I've never lost a deer, any of the deer I shot with a 257 Weatherby, including all the ones I shot with the TSX. And interestingly enough, some of the folks I've read, the complaints, they say they don't get blood trails, or it sort of pencil holes them with the TSX, and again, in total, close to 30, 40 deer with mine, I've never seen that, even on shots that were just a perfect broadside shot, through the lungs or other areas. They've always died very quickly. One of the only times I didn't get an exit was actually on this deer right here. It was a 6-yard shot. The deer was facing dead on. I shot it. It went right through the chest, traveled the length of the body, broke the rear hip, and the bullet was recovered just under the skin, under the rear hip, as the bullet traveled the whole length. So that's one of the only times I didn't get a pass through, but pretty much every other deer, they expire very quickly. The other thing I like about the tip TSX, I haven't experienced anywhere, again, that was 6 yards, and I've shot deer up to 460 yards, 420 yards, almost all the different demarcations in the 300-yard range, 200-yard range, 100 yards, and at pretty much all those ranges, you're still going to get a pass-through shot, which again is just helpful. If you hit it up, like I said, in sort of the high shoulder, it's going to crumple. If you don't, it's just going to be a real quick short run, easy blood trail. I err on, I want the penetration. I'd rather have 2 holes for a blood trail than just 1. So again, really good luck with those TSX bullets. So anyway, I know there's some other bullets out there that I haven't tried. I'm sort of a hunter first and a target shooter second. So once I found a load that worked good and shot well on my gun and has done well on game, I haven't really messed around. I know there's some other options out there that I'm sure would be very effective on game, but as far as the ones we talked about, if you're looking to hear the ballistic tip, the Accubond, or the TSX style bullets, I definitely err on the TSX. One other point I'll make, because I know I was concerned about it starting out, is a lot of people are a little afraid of that 100 grain bullet, and it sounds light when you're used to using big calibers, but again, out to close to 500 yards, every yardage in between, never had an issue. including pretty big deer, a good-sized black bear, all over the country. That when you're using a monolithic bullet like the Barnes, you can really drop down in weight, and the bullet holds together so well, it just doesn't make a difference. So don't have any concern about using a 100 grain. I'm much more confident personally using the 100 grain TSX versus using the heavier, say 115 or 110, and the rapid expanding bullets like, say, an Accubond or a Ballistic Tip. So don't let that be a concern. If you drop down to the lighter weight, you're not going to have an issue. My son last year shot 2 deer with an 80 grain TSX out of 243. Again, pass throughs the deer, good blood trail, they die very, very quickly. So hopefully this helps as you're looking around and trying to get the right bullet for your 257. Appreciate it.